Hello, everyone, and welcome to this spooktacular edition of the Way Too Indiecast, or because it's a Halloween edition, let's say the Way Boo Indiecast. Yeah, I know. Oh, oh God, it's gonna be a disaster.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
I've been waiting for that moment for like a week now.
I know. Yeah. The Way Boo Indiecast. Yes. Yeah. So this is the Halloween edition. An episode I think we're all really excited to get into. I am here with, well, first off, I'm CJ Prince, one of the staff writers on the site. Also here with me is Ananda Dillon. She's staff writer and one of the editors on the site.
Hello.
And with us is also Blake Ginithan, who is let's just say he writes from time to time on the site, and he's a huge horror fan.
I'm a huge horror fan, yes.
Huge horror fan.
And my last name is actually Ginithan.
I thought it was Ginithan.
No, it's
not. Oh God!
Crazy Canadians.
No, I'm like it's I have the Halloween puns, the mispronouncing of the names. So we're going to be talking about our favorite horror movies overall, the films that have scared us the most over time. We're going to talk about the scariest scenes or sequences that we've ever seen in movies, the ones that really made us stay up at night, and then we're also going to get into the villains, the scariest horror villains. The types of bad guys that have terrified us over the years. But first off, as we tend to do at the beginning of the episodes, we're going to have a little game. So Ananda's going to do a little game of synopsis scramble with me and Blake. And Ananda, before you get into the game, maybe for any new listeners, explain the game a little bit and then, start off.
No problem. All right. I wish we had a little intro song. Do-do-do-do-do-do. But this is Synopsis Scramble. So basically we take films, well-known and somewhat not well-known, and we scramble around their plots and character names in order to confuse the players, and whoever can guess what the heck I'm talking about before the other person wins the game. Well, best out of 3 anyways. So this week we are doing a very special horror, spooky, scary synopsis scramble to keep the alliteration alive. And I can't tell if this is going to be harder for you because horror films are already so convoluted, or if it's going to just be super easy because it's so weird anyways, you're going to get like what's going on. But I tried to make them really confusing, so just know that.
I hope you picked like really confusing, ridiculous horror movies.
A little bit. So once you start looking through plot synopses of horror films, they kind of all sound very similar. So yeah. Someone's killing someone else. Oh gosh. Dang it. So that makes it a little harder. But I did my best. And I think you'll at first be really confused, but then you'll probably catch on. But we'll see. You guys ready?
Yep.
All right. So here we go with the first one. So 3 animation students have an idea to make a cartoon about a famed rare sandwich. They head to the East Coast to visit sandwich shops in search of the sandwich. They get a little lost and they start finding sandwich figures made of toothpicks hanging from trees in the woods.
I got it. Ding ding, boo boo, Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
CG, I think it hit us both at the same time.
Once you mentioned, yes, it was the toothpicks. The toothpicks was the dead giveaway. I mean, toothpicks are essentially just small sticks, right?
Right, exactly. So, do you guys want to hear the rest of it or move on?
No, he'd say the rest of it.
Okay, so they animate their search as they go, and one day wake up to find one of them is missing with only a sandwich wrapper left behind. Eventually, the final 2 stumble on much more than they bargained for when they come upon the house of the sandwich. In the basement, they stumble upon a person eating the rare sandwich facing the corner. They are never heard of again, and only their cartoons remain to tell their tale. Get it? Because it's found footage, but I couldn't say they were filmmakers. That would be too obvious.
It's the story of the haunted hoagie.
Exactly. Sandwich, witch, it's not a far cry. All right, so I started easy. I know, there's so many. All right, moving on. Here's the second one. So first up, CJ's got 1 point. Blake is close behind with 0. All right, here's the second one. 7 teenagers attend a cosplay conference together, ready to have great fun and maybe some Magic the Gathering, if you catch my drift. Leading cosplay classes to the younger kids during the day, the teens spend their evenings pairing off to find dark corners to play swords. Ha-cha-cha. But an especially powerful masked wizard, with the magic of imperturbability, begins stalking and casting spells on them until there is one witch left. She calls herself Malice. Fleeing the conference, this witch runs into a kind-looking old woman, but turns out she's the bad wizard's mother, and she turns on Malice, trying to take away her life points. Malice magics her head off and runs away, hiding in a giant milkshake. But the bad wizard, named Raisin, tries to pull her to the bottom of the shake. She wakes up at the conference, and there's no sign of Raisin until the sequel. Wow, you guys did not get this one.
Blake?
I am clueless.
Really?
Okay.
Oh my god. Okay, I'm just gonna take a guess because I think Raisin and Raisin's mother gives it away. I'm gonna say it's Friday the 13th.
Yes.
Wow.
I enjoy that you had many sexual innuendos about a cosplay situation, which is probably the situation with the least amount of sex occurring.
I know. I was trying to do as much opposite as possible, but they still had to be in a camp setting, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
But, like, so I gave them a conference instead, and
Yeah.
I know. And then all the sex like that they have in Friday the 13th, which leads to all their deaths, of course. So and
Again, which could
Raisin,
be any number of horror movies.
exactly. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
They're so puritanical.
I know. But Raisin is the only thing I could think of that kind of rhymes with Jason.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it's kind of a name.
Yeah, and I don't think actually most people really know the name of the main character of that film, which is Alice, which is why I named
that's
her
true.
Malice. So I
I
thought,
think I've seen
well,
it one time, actually. So I'm
oh
not
yeah,
familiar with it.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, it was on TV all the time, right, when we were growing up, but
Yeah, I
that's
haven't-
the only times I've really seen it too. But
Yeah.
I thought I should choose a more well-known, like, popular Halloween film. So that was the one. And points for me for basically duping you guys. All right.
Well, I got it right, but I feel bad now because I was kind of hoping, you know, we'd. I mean, I still think. Do you want to do the third one?
I mean, I just want to avoid a sweep, honestly. So
You just want to what?
I want to avoid the sweep. So
Avoid. Oh, you don't want me to get a hat trick?
yeah,
Ah.
but
Ah.
I have a feeling it's slipping that way. So
Oh, let's do the third one.
Yeah, do it. Come on.
At least you'll get
No, I'm
points
saying,
for having tried.
yeah, I want to do it. I want to avoid the sweep. So
Okay. Yeah, there you go. There you go. All
totally.
right. All right. Here's the third one. A kid in tropical Rio de Janeiro named the Grouch gets a cool new neighbor. This new kid is particularly fond of orange juice. The new kid, Jelly, demands orange juice from her adopted father, and so he goes out every day to get it for her. Yeah.
Is it let the right one in?
Yes.
Oh, really? I was gonna say the good son at first.
No, you're being too literal. No, this one I chose Rio de Janeiro because it's like the exact opposite of freezing cold Sweden.
Yeah.
And then I named him the Grouch because his name is Oscar.
Oh.
Yeah,
And then
that's true.
Jelly rhymes with Ellie, which is the other name of the vampire. All right, let me finish the synopsis so you can hear what else I said. In the meantime, Jelly and Grouch becomes friends. One day when Jelly's dad forgets the orange juice, she attacks a waitress from a cafe to get some, and the waitress in turn starts to really crave orange juice. She goes to the hospital because of her craving and bursts into a gooey mess of orange juice. Jelly tries to invite herself over to the Grouch's house, but her rudeness causes her to cry orange juice. To prove their friendship, Jelly teaches the Grouch how to swim by using other people as flotation devices. They decide to take a trip together, but can only travel in sunlight, which is Jelly's favorite, which of course is the opposite, because they can only travel at night. So that one was really weird.
That one
I
would have
know.
stumped me. I would have
Yeah.
been totally stumped by that one. I'm surprised. It's weird how I thought the Friday the 13th was so obvious enough to stump Blake, and then Blake got that one in like 2 sentences.
Yeah, I mean, I was when you said like the friend and the orange juice, I was like, okay, it's vampires, and then when you said the adoptive dad, that just gave it away for me clearly. So
Nice. All right, well, way to go. So that's 2 for CJ, 1 for Blake. Good game, guys.
Yay. I win again.
yeah, you always do.
Ah,
Oh, all right. Now I figure let's just hop into the main topic, which even though we're an indie site and we like indie films, we we are just huge horror fans. I think all three of us are just massive horror fans. As Blake said earlier, he's a massive horror fan. Ananda, I know you love horror movies.
I'm a super duper horror fan. Have been since I was really way too young, and I wrote my thesis in film school on the genre. So
that's great.
That's how crazy fanatic I am.
I was raised on horror movies by my dad. The first horror movie I watched was Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight. My dad thought it was really fun for me to watch at 6.
Nice.
But yeah. So ever since then, it's been a very loving relationship with horror movies. So I figured let's talk, very general broad, let's talk about just like our favorite horror movies of all time. The movies that we kind of refer to as the greatest ones. And I assume we probably have seen most of these, or some of these at least. So Ananda, I'm going to let you start and tell us about your 2 favorite horror movies of all time.
Okay, should I start with my all-time favorite or the runner-up?
I'd say, save the best for last. I'll do the runner-up first.
Okay. So this is fitting, and I realized this after I put together the synopsis scramble that maybe I shouldn't mention one of my favorite films in synopsis scramble, but oh well. But Let the Right One In is actually one of my all-time favorite horror films, and I am talking about the original Swedish film from 2008, not the American remake, which I think was just called Let Me In or something like that. But mostly I just think it's a really beautiful film on top of being really creepy and well told as a horror film. And I think if those out there who haven't actually seen this movie, a real quick synopsis is, if you didn't get it from my synopsis scramble, it's not about a kid who likes orange juice. It's about a kid named Oscar who's bullied at school pretty often, and he gets a new neighbor in his apartment complex, and this takes place in like really snowy Sweden in the 80s, and this girl named Ellie lives next door to him and comes out at night, starts playing with him, and we sort of discover that Ellie's caretaker is actually tasked with killing people to procure blood for her because she's actually a vampire. And he gets caught and douses himself with acid, and Ellie ends up sucking his blood and basically having to care for herself, but she's kind of a kid vampire, not very good at it, not very subtle about finding food. And what I really like about this film, though, that sort of makes it more than just a horror film, is that it focuses on the relationship with her and Oscar. And the final scene, which I won't ruin, but it's just like one of the most beautiful, graphic, scary, and yet somehow really endearing films I've ever seen in a horror film. And the entire movie is just kind of subtle and quiet and just has this beauty to it, but is also actually really quite scary and horrifying. So I love vampires in general, I should say that. I love the myth and the lore, and I'm always kind of on the hunt for a movie that does them some justice. And this movie is absolutely a gem. So I adore it. You guys like this movie? Have you seen it?
Yeah. I saw it. I haven't seen it since it came out, and I like it a lot. It's like you say, I like that. I always like horror movies that put characters first, because that's what makes them scary, when you actually have characters you give a crap about.
Yeah.
And that is like a really good example of a horror movie doing things right. And yes, I know, I assume you're not referring to the very last scene, but the one the climactic scene.
Right, yeah, it's not technically the end scene. That's true.
No. I love the ending too, because the ending is just so bittersweet.
Yeah.
I don't, obviously, no spoilers for listeners who haven't seen it, but it is a very bittersweet, because it's sweet, but you kind of realize the implications of what you're watching. You're like, oh crap. But yeah, for sure. What about you, Blake?
Yeah, I loved it. I remember you CJ, you messaged me to actually watch the movie when it had come out. You told me, hey, watch this movie, it's really good. And I liked it a lot. It was one of my favorite movies of the year it came out in. I'm actually going to go, I don't know, I'm going to go a step further, and I actually like the remake more than the original. Mainly because, and I agree that the movie gets what you guys said right. It's like, it gets the relationships right, and it makes you care about the characters. And I feel like the remake got that better, or got that aspect done better, and especially it, while making you care about the characters, it actually implemented this sense of dread and doom into the story that the original didn't really do well, in my opinion. but I really do like this movie, and anyone who asks me what they should watch for Halloween, I try to bring up this one because it seems like it gets lost among the shuffle, especially with the remake out for it.
You know, to quickly move it on, Ananda, what is the number one? Since Let the Right One In was the runner-up.
Sure. So my all-time favorite horror film, and actually coincidentally my all-time favorite movie, is The Shining, which came out in 1980. It's got Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance, who's a writer, takes a job as a caretaker of a hotel in Colorado, moves his family over there for the winter, and then starts to go mad under the influence.
I've never heard of that movie. Is it pretty good?
Yeah. Yeah. A few people might have talked about it in some of our
very
articles.
Tiny, very obscure.
I know. Little art house film.
It's entirely in Estonian.
Yeah. So I know. It's not...
That's one of the greatest movies of all time, I think.
I know.
So
right?
good.
It is.
Yeah.
And I really struggled as I was putting together this list, like, do I put this on? It's so cliche. I'm like, well, I have to be true. This is totally my favorite movie. So I once again, I think obviously you're seeing a pattern. I'm kind of drawn to movies that are horror films that are kind of simultaneously horror films, but also like actually cinematically like well done. And so that's another major reason why I love this movie so much. Is Stanley Kubrick is just, you know, a really great director and did this really well. And once again, it's kind of subtle with the supernatural parts of it, which I think is one of the reasons why Stephen King didn't actually like this adaptation of his novel. But I think it's still there, and I've read the book several times, and I don't see why he was so upset about it. But I just think that it's so much more scary that Jack kind of aids in or like gives in to the bad influence of this evil hotel, and that makes it kind of more scary. That like it's not a possession really. It's like he's going mad, yes, but like he's kind of doing it willingly a little bit, and he, like it feeds into like what's already a part of him. And the fact that he's like, they put a kid at the forefront, and so you're seeing like a lot of all the scary imagery is sort of through this kid's eyes, and so it's even more horrifying. And like honestly, what is more like scary or horrifying than an elevator full of blood opening and splashing out into a tiled lobby? You know, horror imagery doesn't really get much better than that. So that's why I think it is an all-time best horror film.
Yeah. It's I actually I watched it years ago as like a kid on like a VHS.
Yeah.
And I just watched it for the first time again, for the second time last year, because I wanted to watch that documentary that came out, the Room 237.
Room 237, yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to refresh, and I mean, it's just like a fantastic horror movie. Like, what blew me away watching again was like the set design. Like the Overlook Hotel is just one of like probably my favorite like production design, set designs, whatever you call it, because it's such an amazing like hotel, and it's so eerie, and it just like that alone makes it creepy from the outset. And I love that the first hour or so is just pure like mood setting, and it works so good. And I agree with you, yeah, like it's even creepier that like Jack Nicholson like it's kind of like he is enjoying the idea of it, like he's indulging in like these very his darkest desires. Like you said, it's a cliche to choose it, but cliches are cliches because they're true. Yeah. What about you, Blake?
I was talking with the horror movies at work the other day with a coworker, and he asked me, he's like, what's the best horror movie, you know, that you think exists? And I said, my favorite or the best? And he said, what's the best? And I was just like, I think it's The Shining. I don't think anything terrifies me more than seeing Jack Nicholson slowly descend into this maniac who, I mean, like, to me, like, what's more scary than a guy hunting his own kid in a hotel with an axe? You know, that's just, I don't know what else I can say about it. It's just such a well-made movie, and knowing that Kubrick tortured these actors while making it just makes everything, it just heightens everything for me.
Yeah, poor Shelley Duvall.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So those are your two favorites, The Shining and Let the Right One In. I'll start with mine. I'll leave yours for last, Blake. First, I'm gonna go reverse. I'm gonna talk about like one of the. I picked mine in terms of like one kind of old and one more new. I'll start with the old pick. It's a cliche, as Ananda said, but it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's
classic.
It is a classic. It is just pure visceral terror. And, you know, Tobe Hooper made it for like next to nothing. It was just this incredibly tiny budgeted movie. And it works so much in the movie's favor because it's just like, it has this like documentary feeling to it while watching it, because there's just such a grittiness and rawness to it. And the set design, like, I said set design again, but like just the house itself and like everything looks very realistic. That there's that quality, and it's just, once the movie like starts going, it just never lets up. And like that dinner scene is just so insane. And Marilyn Burns, who, you know, just passed away recently, she was like, that performance is just so unhinged. Like at the end of the movie, I literally was like, this woman went insane.
Yeah.
You know, like when she cackles at the end. And yeah, I mean, it's like a crazy, just insane movie. I know that you two have seen it because it is a classic, so I don't know if you guys want to add your thoughts.
Yeah, I think what really helps the movie is like there's like the first 30 minutes, like this slow burn where you're like wondering what's gonna happen, and they get to this house, and then like literally hell is unleashed. I mean, actually, you know, our next segment about scariest scenes, I was going to put a scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre where the door slides open and he just goes to town on that guy with an axe or a chainsaw, I guess. That scared the living shit out of me when I first saw the movie. I mean, it's one of the best horror movies ever.
Yeah. I haven't seen the original in a long time. I know I've seen the like remake more recently, but I remember that one like stuck in my mind as being like one of the goriest movies I'd seen like ever, like one of the first really gory ones. Yeah. And like, I mean, putting a meat hook in someone like that, and like his face. Also, I had this weird obsession in middle school with serial killers, and like I think they borrowed that like fake face thing he puts together from another serial killer I'd read about. So like it just added this extra layer of like realness to me. Mm-hmm. And like living in the Midwest and having grandparents that live on farms and things, and spending enough time in those sorts of areas, it is like the like perfect playground for that kind of crazy terror going on. And it seemed a weirdly plausible story to me when I was young enough to fall prey to it. So no, I love that movie. It's a classic for sure.
Yeah, the serial killer you're talking about, I think, is Ed Gein, who was, you know, he would wear women's skin and stuff. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And yeah, it's funny how you mentioned it's one of like the gory ones you've seen, the first gory ones, because I remember when I watched it very young. I actually watched it on my sister had this like tiny like 14-inch TV that had a VHS player combined with it. Mm-hmm. And I rented the VHS and I watched it on there. Like just like my face like an inch from the screen. And I was very young too, and I remember everyone talked about like it's so gory, you know, in the title, so you expect this big, it doesn't have much blood. It's actually not especially explicit, and that's what surprised me. And I think that the fact that people do think of it as this very gory explicit movie, I think shows how like the suggestive power of it, you know.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of relative too, compared to like today's torture porn, where it's kind of saturated and absolutely bathing in blood. So
yeah, but I was surprised when I remember watching. I was just like, this movie doesn't have a lot of blood. I thought it was gonna be like all, you know, blood and guts everywhere and stuff. But you know, but it is very brutal to watch. My new pick, not so new. I think it just came out at the beginning of the 2000s. It's called Cairo, or Pulse, by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. It's a Japanese film. This one, I guess I will give a plot synopsis because I don't think many people know what it's about. It takes place in Tokyo, and it follows two different storylines. One is a group of young, I think, college-age kids who one of their friends kills themselves, and they don't know why, and they try and figure it out. The second storyline has to do with this guy who is buying his first computer, and he doesn't know how computers work or how the internet works. That gives a sign of how, you know, dated this movie is, even though it's, I think, just over a decade old. And what they discover is that essentially ghosts are coming through the internet, coming through, I guess, the online world or whatever, and haunting people and causing them to essentially kill themselves. You know, it sounds a little silly, but the movie is shot in this incredibly murky look, and the way that the director portrays the ghosts is like, it's horrifying. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when we get to the next segment, But there's a sequence in there that it quite literally like petrified me watching it, and it's such a very atmospheric movie, and I think in a lot of ways the way it comments on it's a very technophobic kind of movie too, because it uses, it talks about the internet and stuff, and it's still quite dated today, but I think it has a lot of, it's kind of prescient movie, like it kind of comments on kind of like the loneliness and isolation that comes out from the internet age or whatever you want to call it, and it's a movie that's stuck with me for years and years, and if I ever put it on again, like I will be like just as scared as the first time I watch it, which doesn't happen with me very often with horror movies. I don't know. Have any of you guys seen it?
No, I saw the trailer for it once, and it definitely looked absolutely terrifying, but I have never actually sat down and watched it. But now that you said that, I'm going to.
I watched a little bit of it like maybe 2 years ago or so, and it was still creeping me out quite a bit. And if you're listening, please don't watch the remake with Kristen Bell. Kristen Bell's a nice lady, but that movie's terrible.
It's an awful remake.
Yeah, no, it's just called Pulse.
Yeah, it's just called Pulse.
Okay.
I saw this movie actually based on your recommendation again, CJ. And yeah, it definitely has like I think what really terrified me about the movie was how isolated everyone felt, and I feel like that's a pretty big staple of the horror genre, is to get someone isolated enough to where they have no help and you kind of feel stuck as well with them. But Pulse like really got that right. A few of the scares, they aren't like huge jump scares, but everything that builds towards those scares, they're just, you're just stuck in this trance that you can't get out of, and Pulse is very, very good at that, especially the ending with the plane scene. I'm not going to ruin it, but there's a plane at the end of the movie, and it's so well done with what they do in the movie, and it's a very, very scary one.
Yeah, that's what I like too. How the scale of the movie, the scope of it, just it expands in a way that's really surprising, because it starts out at such an intimate level.
And then you realize how big the struggle is.
How big, and I mean, and it's a terrifying like look at the afterlife too, because the ghosts in this movie are just like stuck to this lonely, miserable existence, and they're basically, if you go into a room that's haunted by a ghost, you just hear the ghost whispering "Help me" over and over and over again. And that's horrifying.
Yeah.
But it's very bleak and very creepy. But so those are my two picks: the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Cairo. So last but not least, Blake, let us know what your favorites are.
So I have one definite favorite, and then the other two I definitely struggle with. So I'll name all three, but I'll only talk about two. So the one that is gonna barely miss the cut is the original Dawn of the Dead, which I absolutely love. I watch it every year for Halloween. And the one that takes its place is John Carpenter's The Thing, which I don't know what I can really say about it. It's one of the pinnacles of the horror genre. If you haven't somehow not seen The Thing, basically an alien life form. Does a crash land on Earth? It falls to Earth, and it's covered up by ice in Antarctica for hundreds of thousands of years. And one day, this American crew, I think they get a distress signal from another base nearby, and they go there, and they find out that there's this big hulking mass of ice that has this being in it. And they take it back to their base, and they melt the ice, and it turns out it's this shape-shifting alien that you don't know who it is. It can be any kind of living organism, and this group of men led by Kurt Russell in one of his best performances, they have to fight off this alien being that they can't even, they don't know who it is, because anyone could be it, and it becomes this game of, I don't know. I guess I always think of it compared to 10 Little Indians, where people are being killed off one by one, and they have to find out who it is before everyone dies. And everything about the movie is so great. The visual effects at that time were outstanding, and I think Ennio Morricone scored the film, and it's just this subtle bass beat that is almost the scariest score that you can imagine. And it's one that I will wreck that movie all day long. It's an amazing movie.
I love John Carpenter. I think that he's a very undervalued director because he does make, genre movies or B movies, but he has made so many, like, just masterful movies.
Yeah.
And The Thing is one of them. I mean, I saw it so long ago, but I only remember one specific scene, though, which is the blood test scene.
Yeah, that's one of the best scenes I think.
It's a really great intense scene. But a fun fact though about the makeup. I remember hearing about this. For one scene, John Carpenter actually had to hire an amputee stunt double in order to get a certain effect right. If you have seen the movie, if you've seen the movie, you might know what scene I'm referring to. It makes a lot of sense. But I found that interesting how they had to do that to work with the practical makeup. What about Ananda? Have you seen it, Ananda?
I have, not in a while. I keep thinking like I really need to rewatch that one because it's been a while, but I do remember loving it. So, yeah. Yeah.
So what's your other pick, Blake?
My number one pick is pretty well known between you, CJ, and a lot of my friends. It's Dario Argento's Suspiria. Right. I first heard about this movie. IGN, the great IGN website, they did DVD reviews, and I think Suspiria was the first movie where they gave 10s across the board to, like for the audio presentation, video presentation, movie presentation, extras, you name it. And I'd never seen that before, so I was like, all right, well, this must be some kind of movie that I need to see. And I remember just buying it without even seeing it, and it's something that I don't know, for me, it's such a unique horror movie compared to everything else in the genre. To go into the plot details, it's basically about an American ballet dancer that gets I don't know if it's a scholarship or what, but she gets invited to train at a ballet school in Germany. And as soon as she arrives, weird things start to happen. Like people get murdered, and there's weird sounds, and you slowly realize that the ballet school is actually a coven of witches. And while the movie is in no way original in its content, the way Argento presents the film with the cinematography and the great score by Goblin, there's really nothing like it, and I honestly don't think I've seen anything like it other than that movie A Mirror, which is basically like an homage to it. So if you're looking for an original horror movie, I don't see anything else that's out there quite like this.
I'd agree. That movie was actually like another runner-up for my favorites. It's definitely an honorable mention on my part. I love Suspiria. I also own that one. Like I showed that one to people who are like, "Oh, I want to watch a horror movie with you, but I don't really want to get scared." And I'm like, "All right, let's watch some Argento and be real weirded out." Yeah. So it's like you'll still get your dose of horror, but it's not really gonna scare you. But it's gonna look really cool while it's happening.
Yeah. It's not a terribly scary movie, but it definitely brings the chills in some scenes. And like I said, the great score just really heightens everything about that movie.
Quick shout out to Dawn of the Dead, the Monroeville Mall theme, which has been stuck in my head ever since I saw that movie. And yeah, I agree with you, by the way, about A Mare, which I love that movie. Okay, I think that about wraps it up for us in terms of the what our favorite horror movies are.
You're listening to the Way Too Indiecast, the official podcast of WayTooIndie.com, where you'll find film news, reviews, and interviews with an emphasis on indie. Follow us on Twitter at WayTooIndie and like us on Facebook.
Moving on, let's talk about the scariest, specific scenes or sequences of all time. There's like a scene or something, a sequence that scares the living crap out of us. Is there any sort of scene or sequence that you can remember that like really scared the crap out of you when you watched it?
I have several in mind. I think the first one I wanted to mention, sometimes the scene is just really well done, right? And so that's why it's really crazy scary. And then sometimes the situation is just perfect and you're in the right frame of mind, or the theater was just packed, or like the sound was up great. But basically when I was like 11 and a child and having sleepovers with my best friend whose parents really didn't like even check on us during sleepovers and we could watch whatever we want, I saw all the Child's Play movies. And this doesn't seem very scary because Child's Play, who cares? It's like a doll running around killing people, I know. But bear with me, I have an irrational fear of dolls, and this is like the most terrifying thing I could think of. So know that about me. So basically, the first movie has some scary moments, especially in the end when like he's going after Andy's mother. But I think the very end of Child's Play 2 is one of the scariest scenes that I can think of, where Andy and Kyle, his foster sister, have somehow amazingly made their way to like the same exact doll factory where the good guys' dolls are made, and Chucky's in hot pursuit of them, and he's coming to get them, always wanting to kill Andy because he needs his body in order to become a human again, if you don't know this story. But basically they like wander around this factory, and Chucky like kills a worker there on a conveyor belt where he gets like doll eyes inserted into his eye sockets, and then he loses a few limbs because he gets trapped in things, but it's cool. He keeps going. He like replaces his hand with a blade, and he finds a little rolly cart to drag his way around and kill Andy. And then Andy figures out how to unscrew a valve that lets, it's also a ridiculous scene. I get this. I know it's ridiculous, but it's also scary when you're 11. He unscrews the valve, and scalding hot plastic comes pouring out on Chucky and turns him into a pile of flesh-colored goo. And it's super creepy. And of course, he's not dead yet, and he rises up from the goo to attack Kyle, and so she sticks an air hose into his mouth, which fills him full of air, and he blows up in a rain of plastic goo and blood, and it just is super disgusting and totally feeds into my irrational fear that a villain the size of a doll could ever actually do anyone any harm. But it's got blood, and it's got Chucky's voice, which I think is actually the most scary thing about him, is that voice he's got. And I don't know, it's irrational. You guys are going to be like, what the hell, Ananda? But that's one of my scariest scenes.
What I love is that I could tell that it scared you because your description is like so vivid when you said you saw this at 11. Like, it clearly made an impact.
I've remembered that scene exactly.
Yeah. It's crazy how that happened. Like when you see something that, like, scares the living crap out of you, like, it never leaves your mind. Like, I have a fear of dolls isn't so bad because, like, there are plenty of people afraid of dolls. I have a very irrational fear of, like, being digested or consumed.
Oh.
That's why The Blob is a horrifying movie to me.
Ananda, if 11-year-old Blake was doing this list, that scene would be on mine as well, because that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid too.
Good.
Yeah,
sure.
It's like the image of someone, like, even if it's a doll, melting and then still alive, and like that sounds like something no child should see. So I don't blame you for having that horrify you. Blake, you picked.
Okay, so when this topic was first brought up, the very, very first scene that I thought of was from the movie Session 9. I believe it's Brad Anderson that directed that.
Yeah, Brad Anderson.
Yeah, I was posting on a movie board years ago, and someone told me to watch the movie with the lights off, and they bet me I could not make it through the entire movie with the lights off. And I said, all right, bet taken, that's fine. So there is a scene, I'm going to say, halfway through, where I believe it's David Caruso. Basically, the movie's about this asbestos crew who is in this old insane asylum that's been run down. They're there to clean it out, and some weird stuff starts happening. And David Caruso goes back one night to investigate, and it's him with a flashlight, of course, no power, and he's walking through the bottom of this insane asylum at night for God knows what reason, and he thinks he sees something, and I swear to God, I paused the movie, went over, turned the lights on, and sat on my couch for a good 5 minutes before I hit play. And it's so hard to describe the scene because it's so simplistic. Like, he believes he sees something moving in the shadows, and it's just how Anderson handles the scene. Just I was done. I had to get some lights on, and therefore I lost the bet. But that's the very first thing that I thought of that terrified me.
Session 9 is a great, like, that's a movie that I wish I was, like, trying to find a way to include it in the topic discussion because I love that movie, and it's so creepy. For me, I got a couple as well. One, I haven't seen this movie in ages, and I actually watched it at like 3 a.m. at night, which I think was kind of a bad idea, but it's such an old movie, and it's Todd Browning's movie Freaks, which I think I was going to pick too, because I think everyone's loving freak show related stuff now, thanks to American Horror Story at the moment. But yeah, I mean that takes place at a sideshow, and there's a plot about a woman who marries one of the freaks because she wants to, like, get access to his money or something. I don't remember too well, but the ending of that movie is horrifying. There's a shot of it's in the dark, like it's at night, it's raining, and you have the shot of like several of these like freaks. I don't like saying the word freaks, but they're like crawling towards the woman that I don't want to get into spoiler details, but basically she pisses them off and they hunt her down and they're just crawling towards her, and you know something horrible is going to happen to her, and they hold off the reveal until a little later, and when they show you the reveal, it is absolutely horrifying. Like it's never ever left my brain, that shot, and I find that amazing. It's like I remember watching, I was like, they made this in 1927. Like it's that creepy and just disturbing and unnerving. I don't know if you guys have seen Freaks, but I think that it's a really like it's amazing me how effective it is even today.
I have not seen that movie yet.
Me neither. Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, like I remember I watched it one night randomly because I remember like the Google Gobble One of Us scene that everyone talks about.
I've seen that scene actually.
Yeah, like and so I wanted to watch it for that. I was like, oh yeah, I watched it, and then like towards the end, I'm like, this is creepy. Like I was like, it's the scene that I always refer to when I'm like, I remember I legitimately was like freaked out watching it.
So, I know we're kind of running on short on time, so maybe I'll just pick one of the two I've got over here. But preface, not my favorite horror film, but definitely one of the scariest scenes from a horror film. And I mean, this movie wouldn't even make my like top 20 list, but The Grudge, and yes, I am talking about the American version because I figure it's by the same director, so I never bothered watching Ju-on. I know I'm a horrible movie lover, sorry. But once again, great like circumstances. I watched this one by myself in my apartment during college, which was a really bad idea because I always just now will remember the end when Karen, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, goes to this like house that she's been working at. It's kind of haunted with the spirits of people who've died in a rage, right? That's the whole Grudge premise. And she goes because her boyfriend's looking for her there, and she knows he shouldn't go there. And she goes, and when she gets there, she finds him on the ground, and she's trying to help him get up and get out of the house when she hears something coming down the stairs. And it's Kayako or whatever, the murdered woman who's been like haunting this house. And she's crawling down the stairs with her hair over her head and her body is like contorting at weird angles. I mean, we all know the scene. You've probably seen it in the trailer or like anything else. But it happens like so slowly. And that noise she makes is literally the scariest noise that I can think of, which I think that's the noise that me and my brother used to make to each other to annoy each other when we were kids. And it is now the scariest noise. If anyone makes that noise, I'm like instantly freaked out. It's become this whole new thing for me. But so the Kayako like crawls down the stairs and crawls on top of Doug and basically scares him to death, and then starts coming towards Karen, and Karen like opens a door to get away, and like the face of another one of the haunters in the house like slowly kind of goes down at her, also making that noise. I don't know. The whole thing is just, I was crazy freaked out, like could hardly keep my eyes open watching it by myself alone in college.
It's interesting you picked that one because
Yeah.
I thought the scene everyone refers to in The Grudge when they tell me is the one where the girl gets pulled under the covers.
Oh yeah.
Like that's the one where I was like, oh my god, but no, like that
This
to
one
me,
was way scarier to me.
yeah, that like to me that's like the classic image of like Kyle
Yeah.
and the noise.
Sure.
Of that.
I know.
I actually have a story with that movie as well. I had a friend who worked at a movie theater, who was a manager at a movie theater, and he's like, let's go to a movie. It was like 2 a.m. He's like, I have the keys, let's go see a movie. I was like, all right. So we went and saw The Grudge, and the theater was actually leaking water in the theater we were in. And I believe one of the scenes had like water dripping as a part of the soundtrack. So we're watching this movie, and on the screen there's like water drops hitting the ground, you know, and it's kind of, that's interesting. And all of a sudden, like behind us in real life, water is dripping onto the floor, and it yeah, like you said, it's not even a great horror movie, but that just added so much to the experience.
Blake, what about you? We'll each do just one more, so like another one.
All right, so I already mentioned the movie The Thing, but one of the scenes that actually made me just yell holy shit while watching the movie out loud was the defibrillator scene in The Thing, which CJ, you actually somewhat mentioned earlier, and I don't want to give too much away, but basically one of the guys in The Thing, I believe he has a heart attack, and he's starting to flatline, and a guy goes to hit him with some defibrillators, and well, it does not end very well for him at all. And like I said, that was one of the scenes where I literally just, holy shit, you know, like who like I've never seen something like that before.
Absolutely. I figure, okay, well, since we're low on time, I want to mention just a quick shout out to Cairo and the scene in the Forbidden Room, which is when you first actually see a ghost in the movie. It is like it is one of the scariest scenes I think I've ever seen in a movie. It is so bizarre and so frightening. But the one I want to mention, because I think you have to mention it with like a scariest scene discussion or list or what have you, would be Mulholland Drive and the diner scene, which if anyone has seen that, you immediately know what I'm talking about, and you're probably immediately kind of wincing. It is like it's kind of a weird standalone scene in the movie, but that's because the movie was originally a pilot for a TV show, and then it just didn't get picked up, so they turned it into a movie. It's just these two guys at a diner talking, and one of them describes this dream he had, and the end of the dream is that he says that he walks out behind the diner, and he sees a face that he never wants to see again, and then suddenly real life starts acting out exactly the way he described in his dream, and he does end up going out back, and you see what he sees. And it is, I mean, David Lynch is not a horror filmmaker, but he has some really horrifying scenes in his movies. That might be the scariest one he's done by far. It shows how powerful it is because of the mood the scene has, and that you know exactly what's coming. He tells you at the beginning of the scene when he describes his dream, and yet when it comes, you're still like freaked out.
Nice.
I don't know.
You know, Bernard and I are actually working on a feature that's coming out this week that's about the scariest non-horror films, and of course we have to feature some Lynch on there. So if you're not into horror films, check out that list. You'll still get scared.
Ananda, have you seen Inland Empire?
Just parts of it, not all of it, actually. I know.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Oh yeah.
Say some people argue that that's the most like weirdest of his. I still think Eraserhead is like up there, and that's like his first.
Inland Empire is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
It is like, I mean, Eraserhead is like a strange nightmare. To me, Inland Empire is like a straight up fever dream.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, it's crazy. And I mean, I was gonna mention Lost Highway as well. That the Robert Blake or whatever his name, when he shows up, that tiny role he has, which is so unsettling and creepy. I think we could probably just chat for a very, very long time about all the scenes that scare the crap out of us. For those of you who are listening and haven't seen it on the site, we just recently put a feature up to help celebrate for Halloween of the top 10 scariest movie villains. If you haven't seen it, please go check it on waytooindie.com. We had a good list, I think, but there were some that, you know, like, I was itching to put a few on there, but, you know, you can only pick so many. It's 10. So, yeah, just quickly, where there's some, you know, like, let's talk, like, some horror villains that, you know, you guys wish you could have, you know, included on there if you could.
Once again, totally irrational, but I think I would have added Chucky to that list just because he did scare me so much as a teenager and preteen, so much. But also, I mean, I want to give him a little bit of credit, like in the character that they gave him, because he is like a serial killer and he's just living in a doll, and he like gets into voodoo magic, and he's got the crazy, nasty voice and the eyebrows. I mean, the eyebrows really make him like most scary. I'd say that like crazy face of his, but and he's, you know, he's going after a kid. That's like extra villainous of him, you know, like his main subject is that.
Yeah. Blake, do you have a villain or two?
Yeah, I've got a couple. The first one that immediately popped in my head was Ghostface from the Scream series. It's one of my favorite horror series, I guess. It's kind of obviously gone downhill like most horror movies or horror series do. But just the idea of the mask itself really terrified me when I first started watching the movies, and they still do. And I honestly can't really pinpoint why they do it. They just do. Maybe it's the way like the killers, like it seems like they float when they're running through the houses. You can't hear them or anything, and it's almost like a ghost. That's the one. That's one, and I'll just quickly name off my other one and not really go into it too much. It's the Xenomorph from the first Alien movie. I found pretty terrifying as well. Alien
is definitely a classic one, you know. But the other one, for me, like, is Freddy Krueger. I mean,
he's the best, man.
He attacks you where you're safest.
I really wanted to put him on the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
great. One of the best,
Of course.
villains ever created. And he's so clever. He's like the funniest one too. Maybe not in the first movie, but like in the sequels for sure. He gets funnier, and like his one-liners are amazing.
Yeah, like it's funny how his progression when you watch the movies, which I did, like I watched all the movies years ago, is like the progression he goes from like, just menacing, terrifying guy to like someone you just like laugh along with and have fun, because he just keeps spouting one-liners.
He's a comedian by the end of the series.
Yeah, like that's what I find. No, I was gonna say quickly the other one I wanted to briefly mention is Mick Taylor from Wolf Creek, the serial killer. I think Wolf Creek gets a lot of flack, and it doesn't deserve it, because I think it is a very scary movie. That is one killer that always freaked me out, because he is just like this pure, unstoppable, terrifying force. Like I literally had this feeling of like, this guy cannot be stopped. And yeah, like I remember that one I always feel is just like a very underrated villain.
If I was going to briefly plug one more on my list, or kind of a combo one, I put both John Doe from Seven and Jigsaw from Saw together, and mostly because I lumped them together because they're both killers who do it for like so-called altruistic like reasons. They think what they're doing is for a good cause. Like John Doe in Seven, which is debatably not a horror film. I know it's more of a psychological thriller, but he kills because he thinks he's teaching the world a lesson, and then Jigsaw thinks he's teaching his victims a lesson to like appreciate life more. And also, I'm not condoning the later Saw movies that got out of control. I'm talking about like the first one. But I love those kinds of villains. I think those are the best kinds of villains, like the kinds that are straight up convinced that they're doing the right thing. So that's the thing. Like that's the thing with serial killer movies. They gotta have a good motive. They have a good motive, then you're fine. They have great motives. And I think Seven's a horror movie. Like there are so many disturbing scenes in that.
Yeah.
It's about a murderer. So I mean, I guess that kind of.
Yeah, I don't think many horror movies can achieve the level of like horror that like the sloth scene has.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like
that one and Silence of the Lambs I always have a hard time classifying, but they're two of my favorites. But I'm like, nah, I'm gonna call them horror films. Who cares?
That about wraps it up of our villains. Once again, if you want to see the rest of the list, these are the ones that just we personally picked that didn't make it on. But if you actually want to see the 10 we did pick, like please go onto the website and read the feature. We have a lot of good picks on there, and some surprising picks as well. As for right now, though, I think that about wraps it up for us on this episode, the Spooktacular edition of the Way Too Indiecast. I have to come full circle on it. I have to.
You too.
Yes. So yeah, just a quick recap. We obviously had our fun synopsis scramble with orange juice loving vampires. And then we went into our favorite horror movies of all time with plenty of good picks like The Shining, which is one of the all-timers, Suspiria, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what have you. Then we go into our scariest scenes, and I think Child's Play 2 sums that whole topic up.
So scary.
It is a scary.
You're an 11-year-old out there.
Yes, or an 11.
Do it.
Yeah, don't do it. Like we're traumatizing some poor 11-year-old who knows iTunes really well and found this podcast. If you're listening, like on the site, please leave a comment. Let us know about what scenes scare the crap out of you, because it's always fun to talk about what scares us. And then as you just saw, our discussion of some villains that we love but could not make the cut for our 10 scariest villains. That's it. Ananda, where can we find you on social media in the ether of the internet?
If you would like to track me down, I'm on Twitter, and my handle is at Ananda, Ananda, Writes.
And Blake?
I am on Twitter at JohnG5150.
And you can find me on Twitter at CJ_Prin. That's CJ_PRIN. For website Way Too Indie, if you found us through iTunes, please rate us, subscribe to us, leave comments, let us know what you think. We'd love to hear comments and suggestions for future episodes. Follow the site at Way Too Indie on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. Sure, visit www.waytooindie.com, of course. We always have articles, features, reviews. As Ananda said, there's a nice little feature coming up about scariest non-horror movies. Be sure to go and check that out when it goes online. Thanks for listening. We hope you...
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
Exactly. Happy Halloween, and that's it from us. But go out and get scared. Halloween.